when 21 Sikhs took on 10,000 Afghan warriors. Famous last stands. We hear a lot about famous last stands in military history. For example, the legendary last stands of the 300 Spartans at the Battle of Thermopylae and the 200 Texans at the Battle of the Alamo. However, in the West at least, we don't hear much about the story of the Battle of Saragarhi in present-day Pakistan, where 21 Sikh Indian soldiers of the British Indian Army fought a last stand against more than 10,000 Pashtun Afghan tribesmen. Theirs is indeed a remarkable story of hopeless bravery in the same caste as Leonidas Spartans, unbelievably brave young men fighting to the death against overwhelming odds. A hotbed of trouble. The mountainous region straddling the border of present-day India and Pakistan has been a hotbed of trouble for hundreds of years. When the British were in India, the region was then known as the Northwest Frontier Province, and on September 12, 1897, in the Battle of Saragarhi, 21 soldiers of the 36th Sikh Regiment of the British Indian Army fought a last stand against 10,000 besieging Pashtun tribesmen. Theirs is a story of incredible bravery in the face of overwhelming odds. The British had some control of this volatile area, but tribal Pashtuns continued to cause them lots of problems. Thus, a series of forts originally built by Ranjit Singh, the ruler of the historic Sikh Empire, were garrisoned by Sikh infantry. Two of the forts located in the Hindu Kush mountains in the province were Fort Lockhart and just a few miles away, Fort Gulistan. However, the forts were not visible to each other, so the heliograph communication post at Saragarhi was built between the two, housing mirrors that reflected sunlight to communicate in Morse code. The Saragarhi post, situated on a rocky ridge, consisted of a small mud and stone blockhouse with loopholed ramparts and a signalling tower. It was considered vital in the defence of the two forts and the region. The 36th Sikhs, whose origins went back to 1858, had been reformed at Jalandhar, Punjab in 1887. In December 1896, the regiment was sent to the northwest frontier, dispersed among the forts, and given the mission of subduing the rebellious local Pashtuns. A general uprising by the Afghans began there in 1897. And between 27 August and 11 September, determined efforts by Pashtuns to capture the forts were thwarted by the 36 Sikhs. In 1897, Afghan raids increased, and in September, Afridi tribesmen allied with the Afghans twice attacked Fort Gulistan. Both the attacks were repulsed, and a relief column from Fort Lockhart on its return trip reinforced the signalling detachment positioned at Saragarhi, increasing its strength to 3 NCOs and 18 other ranks or sepoys for a total of 21 men. 10,000 Pashtuns. At 9 in the morning of September 12, between 10,000 and 14,000 Pashtuns assaulted Saragarhi, while thousands more kept the troops at Forts Lockhart and Gulistan pinned down, preventing either fort from sending relief forces to Saragarhi. Heliograph. Remarkably, a record of their actions was preserved, as throughout the fight, signaller Gamuk Singh kept Lieutenant Colonel John Horton, the regimental commander at Fort Lockhart, informed of the events as they were happening via heliograph. Despite the slaughter all around him, the brave Sikh sepoy did not flinch, signalling the moments of the battle in real time while his fellow Sikhs fell all around him. The morning of the battle, the Sikh detachment commander, Havildar, equivalent rank to Sergeant, Isha Singh, peered through his binoculars from the watchtower of his post as the Afghan host approached. Quickly, Sepoy Gamuk Singh then climbed the signalling tower to set up his heliograph and sent the first signal to Fort Lockhart. Enemy approaching the main gate. Need reinforcements. Outflanked. Lieutenant Colonel Horton made moves to rush troops to help the outnumbered Sikhs, but it was too late. The tribesmen had cut off the supply route between Fort Lockhart and Saragarhi. Horton transmitted back, unable to break through, hold position. Horton was able to view the enemy approach from Fort Lockhart, and he counted at least 14 enemy standards. each representing around 1,000 tribesmen. He relayed this information to the Saragarhi post. Havildar Ishar Singh consulted with his men as to whether they should stay and hold the post, which they knew meant certain death, or abandon it in the hopes of surviving. Selflessly, the Sikhs unanimously agreed to hold the position in order to prevent, or at least delay, the enemy from reaching the two forts. Havildar Ishar Singh signalled back, "Understood." Outdated rifles. The Sikhs would go on to repulse many attacks despite being equipped with outdated single-shot Martini Henry rifles. The latest 10-round Lee Enfield magazine rifle was issued to the British Army in 1895, yet the Sikhs at Saragarhi were denied these, as per British policy after the 1857 Indian Mutiny, or First War of Independence, the intention being to prevent any further mutinies and uprisings from getting out of hand. However, despite understanding the futility of the defence, they are determined to fight to the death and kill as many of the enemy as they could. It begins. The post's bugler sounded and the riflemen now prepared to face the advancing enemy. 10,000 and more Afghan tribesmen versus just 21 heroic Sikhs. The Martini Henry fired a heavy lead bullet and had an effective range of about 400 yards. Havildar Ishar Singh told his men to hold their fire, allowing the enemy to come closer. Soon they were in range of the post and the Havildar ordered his men to fire. The front ranks of the enemy thinned just a little as tribesmen crumpled to the ground. The Havildar had them reload and fire again, volley after volley, but the following ranks of the enemy hardly faltered, and it seemed that they would soon reach the post. Fire at will. Now the defenders were firing at will, Ishar Singh shouting encouragement as the Afghan tribesmen came on. Somehow the first wave of attacks was beaten off and the Afghans forced to regroup. The first wave of the enemy had tasted the Sikh defenders' fierce resolve and been beaten, but there were simply too many of them, and now the second and third waves were pressing. Sepoy Bhagwan Singh is recorded by the signaller as the first soldier to be killed, and Naik Lai Singh seriously wounded. Now it was that the Afghan tactics were revealed and they began to assault the post from two directions, towards the main gate and the other at the gap at the fort. To deal with this fresh emergency, Havildar Singh regrouped his remaining men to face both directions. Surrender. Amazingly, the enemy was repulsed once again. It was at this juncture in the battle that the Pashtuns called on the defenders to surrender. They offered the Sikh soldiers favourable terms if only they would give up and vacate the post. This the Sikhs rejected out of hand. The Afghan tribes had a reputation for committing atrocities against their enemies. The Pashtun were fierce warriors and customs and culture in the wild Hindu Kush mountains reflected the harsh terrain. Torturing captured soldiers to death, therefore, by, for example, castration and skinning alive was the norm. In a poem entitled The Young British Soldier, Rudyard Kipling penned these immortal lines. When you're wounded and left on Afghanistan's plains and the women come out to cut up what remains, just roll to your rifle and blow out your brains. A blow-by-blow account. The enemy had by now regrouped and assaulted the little post once more as Lieutenant Colonel Houghton looked on from his vantage point in Fort Lockhart. Sepoy Gamuk Singh maintained his communications to his commanding officer in the fort, passing almost a blow-by-blow account of the proceedings. Wave after wave of tribesmen hurled themselves at the defenders, who, however, stayed resolute despite their increasing toll of dead and dying men. The death toll on the enemy kept mounting too, but their numbers were huge and the dead easily replaced. By noon, the signaller reported that the number of defenders in the post were now reduced by half to just 10 men. Soon after this report, the Pashtuns finally managed to breach one of the walls. The battle had raged back and forth all morning. Sacrifice. Despite being badly wounded, Havildar Ishar Singh ordered his remaining men to withdraw into the inner bastion of the post as he held the attackers at bay at the breach in the wall, fighting in fierce hand-to-hand combat with two sepoys at his side. Out of ammunition, all three of them fixed their bayonets and charged the tribesmen, whence they fell at last, riddled with bullets and sabre cuts. Pashtun tribesmen were now entering the post's inner perimeter where the final desperate fighting took place. The handful of remaining Sikhs, just 4 on the signaller in his tower, fought on. Finally, only one man, Sepoy Gamuk Singh, remained alive. At 15:30 hours, he passed his last message to Fort Lockhart. "They are getting in now. Shall I take a rifle or shall I go on signalling?" One man versus 10,000. Lieutenant Colonel Horton granted the signaller permission to defend himself. Just one man, the youngest on the post, alone against thousands of screaming Afghan tribesmen. With the Sikh battle cry, "Jo bole so nihal," Sat Sri Akal, victory belongs to those who recite the name of God with a true heart. He flung himself at the enemy, reportedly killing 20 Pashtuns before he himself fell. After their lengthy assault on the post, the Afghans attempted to invest Fort Gulistan, but the delay imposed by the Sikh heroes of Saragarhi was too much, and reinforcements arrived at the fort on 13-14 September, before the Afghans could attack it. So the Sikhs' epic last stand was not in vain. Indeed, it was an unparalleled feat of resistance that should never be forgotten. Legacy. When news of this outstanding feat of arms reached London, members of Parliament gave a standing ovation to the fallen. All 21 Sikh soldiers were posthumously awarded the Indian Order of Merit, equivalent to the Victoria Cross, the highest award of gallantry available to Indian soldiers at the time. Queen Victoria said, "It is no exaggeration to record that the armies which possess the valiant Sikhs cannot face defeat in war." We hope that you enjoyed learning about the amazing last stand of the 21 Sikhs at Saragarhi. Please like, comment and subscribe if you did. And see you next time.